Hi, I wanted to just take a quick moment to talk about why I love fingering weight yarn. And I realize I talk negative about a lot of things I don't like 5 things you don't need to buy or things that I'm not keen on. And I figure let's talk about something I actually really enjoy for once because I really enjoy working with fingering weight yarn and I really like making shawls even though I don't wear shawls. Which is why you'll notice in my stash busting videos, which I just finished filming one, you'll notice I don't make very many shawls anymore, and that is simply because I have, no joke, at least 12, and they don't make it onto my wardrobe. I don't wear them. I only have a few months out of the year where they are appropriate, and I'd rather wear a sweater because you don't have to hold it closed. But I love making them. And in particular, I love making them out of fingering weight yarn. Now, I have a texture issue. Some things, if I feel them between my fingers, give me this feeling of wool in my teeth. Like literally, if you took a clean sock and bit into it, that feeling, and I do not like that feeling. And some very cheap, thick yarns give me that feeling and I don't like it. I never liked it. And even when I was doing those little sewing cardboard puzzle things, they'd be this little square of cardboard with holes punched in, and you'd be given a very thick, I honestly think it's like a 5 weight acrylic yarn that had like tape on each end. Well, tape on one end, like a shoelace, and a knot on the other so it couldn't go through the hole. And then you're supposed to sew up and down through the holes in a facsimile of embroidery. That's how I got started in embroidery when I was about 4. And it never felt right. I didn't like it, that weird texture thing. And it just like I enjoyed the activity of it. Once I eventually got old enough for a real needle and some actual thread, I did pretty well not tying it in knots. I remember being one of the only kids at one point in my kindergarten who could do it effectively, without getting knots in the yarn. But I never liked the thickness of it. And even when I was getting all that Red Heart Super Saver or Karen Simply Soft or Karen Pound of Love or Bernat, whatever, from Joanne Fabrics back in 2018 when I was over purchasing yarn. I never really loved worsted weight yarn, and I almost never use bulky or super bulky unless I need to get it for a particular reason. Like when I recently purchased yarn for some videos. By recently, I mean last year, nearly a year ago. I always had this image, and it was something in particular with sewing that I really liked, with embroidery in particular, was having a little needle and doing something very delicate, going up and down and in and out and pulling, and just having this thin little thread, and just it's so delicate and small. And I really kind of liked the aesthetic of it. And I did something kind of arguably dumb when I first started knitting because I had knit a garter knit swatch and I'd knit a garter purl swatch. I may have made a hat, just completely BSing a pattern, and then I decided to make socks. My first pair were worsted weight, and I didn't love the yarn. I didn't love doing DPNs. So my next pair were on interchangeable needles. Eventually, I found my Chow Goos, and they were with fingering weight yarn, and I loved it. It felt delicate and thin, and although it's a thick pair of socks, the yarn was perfect. And it's only a thick pair of socks compared to the commercially made super thin kind I'd used before. But I still feel that it's a good, thin, sturdy fabric, And I really love handmade socks. And fingering weight just it threaded that balance between being very fine and delicate but not too fiddly. Knitting with lace weight is a little too fiddly for me. I know some people love it and like knitting actual lace with lace weight, especially that particularly thin and wavy cobweb lace that is just the thinnest little stuff. And it's remarkable the people who can do that. But I really like fingering weight. It creates a commercial feeling fabric without being too thin, you know? And I like making shawls. I realized I really like projects that I can kind of zone out on. And shawls are a good one. You have a little something to do at the beginning, especially if you're doing a triangle or something on the bias. You have something to think about. You could do various patterns. You know, you're doing a pattern for a long time. Usually there's like a 4 or 6 round repeat if you're doing a stitch pattern. So there's something to think about, but not too much. And you can watch an episode of something or listen to an audiobook. I really enjoy listening to audiobooks, really doing that this year while stitching, but it's just enough engagement to not be bored, and it's just enough nothing that you have to think about to be able to zone out or focus on something else without having bored eating syndrome, which is a problem I have. So yeah, that's why I like it. And I know I don't finish things quickly. The sunset sweater I made, which was the Flax Light by Tin Can Knits, um, it's the longest I think it's ever taken me to knit a sweater, simply because I had like 2 to 3 times more stitches than I would have had to make for the exact same size in worsted weight, which I also made. But I do like the fact that that sweater is thinner so I can wear it when it's a little warmer. I'm not restricted to wearing it when it's the coldest that California gets, which my Michigan family keeps telling me is not that cold. So, anyway, I really like it. I like that it's loose and it can be flowy. You can really affect the texture by choosing different needles. Like, I really like that a US size 1 creates a dense sock fabric, whereas a US size 4 makes a lighter, airier, breezier fabric. And that really just affects drape, especially depending on the fiber count, which I really do like sock yarn because sock yarn is sturdy enough for any garment and it pretty much always looks nice. I even like fingering weight yarn to crochet with because one of the big issues I find with crochet is that you can wind up with something that's a fairly stiff fabric and it feels extra thick, which sometimes you want, especially if you're doing an applique or a little hair flower or something. But fingering weight is perfect for curtains, or it also makes a really nice, slightly heavier shawl, even in crochet. So, yeah. Now, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but it does make me wonder what your favorite yarn weight is and what you like to make with it. So, happy crafting. Leave me a comment.